All right, so let's go. Hi, everyone. My name is Tiina, and I come from the city of Turku in southwestern Finland. Thank you, Esther and Marek and Christina, for the good presentation so far. It was really interesting to hear everything so far. And I will tell a bit about the city of Turku's climate targets and what we have ongoing right now here in the city of Turku in southwestern Finland. So I work in the central administration of the city of Turku, and we have a small climate team here managing and coordinating the climate strategy and the climate plan that we have approved last year in the city council. So let's see. So I will tell you shortly about our objective to become carbon neutral by 2029. And we also have an objective to become climate positive thereafter. And I will just tell you shortly about what that means and what it practically might mean for us. And just those two objectives in mind, I will also tell you Turku's most important climate plan entities in a short nutshell, since we don't have too much time here. And then I will tell you a bit about our climate resilience and adaptation project in Turku, because we have a risk and vulnerability assessment that has been made last year, some results regarding that. Okay, so Turku has the objective of becoming carbon neutral by 2029. And the city council in Turku has approved this objective unanimously last April, so almost 1 year ago. And we analyzed our possibilities of setting a more ambitious climate goal. And before this 2029 goal, our goal was set on 2040, actually. But we decided to patch things up a bit and take the carbon neutral goal a bit closer in time, because we analyzed it and it came up that it is actually technically possible to be carbon neutral in 2029. And well, the political will behind this is strong, because the city council, as I said, approved this unanimously. So in April, we decided on a city strategy that includes this objective. And well, a net zero carbon footprint, and our emissions are only as high as the amount we can offset or bind. And you might wonder, why 2029? Why not 2030? Because that's the usual goal year that the cities or organizations set for their carbon neutrality. Well, Turku has a very special anniversary in 2029. Our beloved city turns 800 years old, and well, the city council decided that what better way to celebrate the year than by becoming carbon neutral. So that's the background behind this year. But then we have approved our climate plan in the city council in last June, and this climate plan includes an objective to become climate positive from 2029 onwards. So, well, carbon neutrality is only one milestone on the way towards a long-term sustainable lifestyle in a city, and we decided that we need a long-term objective to go with this carbon neutrality objective. So climate positive or a carbon negative city area takes this kind of a long-term view, in, if you could say that. So this is the challenge, but in order to achieve something great, we decided to set our goals as high as possible. And probably you already know this, but just to make it clear, a climate positive or a carbon negative city means that our net effect on the climate is removing carbon dioxide from the air instead of adding any, or even having a net zero effect. So we have a negative net effect on climate. So in practice, it means that our offset and carbon binds need to be higher than our emissions. quite a challenge, but we are positive that we will accomplish this. And if I may, we could take the first question in my poll I had many questions, but I will just take one of them actually, because we are a bit short on time. So if it's possible to
Yes, so it's the question about the goal, right?
Yes, has the city, your city, or since there are organizations and business sector here as well, has your city or organization set a goal to reduce its carbon emissions?
Yes.
And there are some alternatives, just to have a quick view about what the attendees here.
Okay, so now the voting has started. Please select which applies to your city.
Will be interesting to see.
So we have 64% of you, now 73. Let's wait a bit more. Can we reach 80%?
We don't need many for that, so so good.
Just a few seconds to submit your answer. Okay, so if there's no more coming, let's close it and we'll share the results with you in a moment.
Yeah.
So there you go. As you can see from the results, 50% have set a goal and measures have been prepared and decided on. That's wonderful. 25% answered yes, but measures have not yet been prepared. Nobody answered no, but we are preparing to set a goal. We are not preparing. Okay, that's interesting. And we are not preparing to set a goal.
How many percent was that? I have such a small
25.
screen here. That
25%.
Okay, interesting. So there's quite a variety of different situations but of course now we don't have the data about which ones are cities. But anyway, this is interesting. Thank you for your answers. So I will tell you a bit about the Sustainable Energy and Climate Action Plan, the SECOP, that we have prepared, that the City Council approved in June 2018. So that's the SECOP that aims for a carbon neutral Turku in 2029. So we have the overall objective of reducing our greenhouse gas emissions by a minimum of 80% compared to the 1990 level, and then the rest will be compensated or binded. So then we also have some milestones along the way, milestone objectives along the way. So already in 2021, our city area has the aim of reducing our emissions by 50% from the 1990 level. In a short while, I will tell you what the situation is right now. But then in 2029, we have a reduction, hopefully have a reduction of already 65 to 70% from the 1990 level. And then finally, by 2029, we have reached carbon neutrality and we have the minimum of 80% compared to the 1990 level and compensating for any remaining emissions left. So that's the scope that we have here right now. And also these milestone objectives go in accordance with the city council terms, so in Finland. So that's also one important aspect in our work. And this has of course throughout the way been prepared in accordance with the EU model, with the SECOP model. So here's a short introduction to what are greenhouse gas emissions, how they are divided right now, or not right now per se, but according to our latest numbers that we got, and this is by sector in 2017 using a Finnish CO2 report method. So there's a CO2 report that our city reports to and that we order our emission reporting from. So this is from that source. Well, just to sum this pie up a bit. So 2/3 of our emissions generate from energy, the energy system in its entirety, electricity, district heat, separate heating, industry and machinery, so on. So that's of course our most important sector to tackle. But our emissions in transport take up for 1/4 to 1/5 of our emissions. And that's actually an even more challenging sector for us to tackle because, well, we have made quite significant investments in energy and transitioning to low carbon energy already. And in transport, we have many very successful and good projects ongoing, and we have very good measures ongoing, but every citizen in Turku anyway choose every day how they go to work or go to school or whatever. So actually our scenario is that in 2029, of course, this pie and these sectors will look very different. So transport in its entirety will take up probably about 50% of this pie in 2029. So maybe to give a perspective of what kind of a challenge we are tackling with this transport sector here. And as I told you, I promised to tell you a bit about what our situation is right now and how we have managed to tackle our emissions so far. So according to our latest number, we have managed to reduce our emissions in their entirety almost 1/3 from the 1990 level, so almost 30%, which is we think it's a nice accomplishment already, but yes, nice, but we need an even better pace because in 2021 we already need to have 50% of our emissions reduced. And the emissions per capita are almost 40%, but well, it gives a perspective of population growth here in the Turku region. This is a region that grows very fast right now. We have a good economical growth right now, and lots of jobs in, for example, the marine industry sector, and lots of people moving in. So the emissions per capita reduced by 40% tells maybe more about the fact how the population growth is developing here in this region. And we gladly also, we are proud to disclose to CDP. So the calculation of our greenhouse gas emissions in our area is completed annually using, well, the best method available, but the emissions are monitored as part of the implementation of city strategy and climate plan, and also reported in accordance with UN requirements through the CDP system. And then we also have our European Union level with our SECAP, and then we have the Finnish level for our CO2 report, where I showed you the pie from. So we have 3 different levels where we actually report our emissions, and we get very valuable information about other cities internationally also through these reporting methods. So it's a very important tool for us as well, and an important network. Well, so a little bit about our climate mitigation entities. So what our climate plan actually consists of. So we have 5 important entities. The first one being a carbon neutral energy system, which takes up, as I said, about 2/3 of the greenhouse gas emissions in the Turku region. And then we have the low carbon sustainable mobility system that we need to develop, and that takes up 1/5 or 1/4 of the greenhouse gas emissions in the Turku region. And then we need to further develop our sustainable urban structure, because it has, well, of course, a large effect on energy and mobility in the entire region. And The Turku City Group also needs to show a front-runner role here. So we have many affiliate companies, for example, in housing that we are working closely with, for example, to create carbon neutral or even energy positive building, and we have several projects ongoing concerning that. And then, as an important fifth entity, we need to strengthen our carbon sinks further. So increasing the Turku area's ability to bind carbon is crucial to our climate mitigation plan, both our climate adaptation and our climate mitigation plan. So we need to also be able to motivate that strengthening the carbon sinks is both a mitigation and an adaptation measure. Yeah, let's go forward, and I will tell you just very shortly about our carbon neutral energy system plans and a few points about what we have included in our climate plan. So our heat, cold, and steam and electricity in our region in Turku will be carbon neutral at the latest by 2029. So the Turku Energy Company is owned entirely by the city, and we are working, of course, closely together to reach this target. And also the use of coal, we still have coal in our energy use in our district heating system. So that will be phased out hopefully by 2025. But this is provided that the government participates in the investment costs. Otherwise, it will be by 2029. So there's there's a coal phasing program nationally that is prepared right now, and if all will go as planned, we will be able to, the front runner cities that want to phase out coal earlier can get this kind of an investment package for that, and then we will be able to phase out coal by 2025. And then the share of renewable energy in district heating is at least 65% by 2021. And this is actually the sector that enables us to have reduced our emissions as a whole 50% by 2021. So that's the most important sector in that sense. And then the share of renewable electricity and heat sold by Turku Energia, the Turku Energy Company, is at least 80% by 2025. Yeah, let's go forward. So here we just have a few examples of investments for transition to renewable energy in the last 4 years. So we have a mix of different renewable energy sources used here. We have wind and solar power, wood, wastewater, municipal waste, landfill gas, biogas, industrial loss heat. And we have a new multi-fuel power plant also in Naantali, in a small city near Turku, where we are replacing slowly, or bit by bit and step by step, replacing the use of coal both for electricity and heat production. And we have a pellet fuel standby built in 2015, and a new wood gasification facility also built in 2014. And on top of these, we also have a heat pump, for example, in Kakola. It's an area in Turku near the center that utilizes wastewater heat to produce both district heating and cooling. And that, for example, corresponds to the heating needs of about 25,000 citizens of Turku. So we have different heat pump solutions also very widely used here. And also we are piloting two-directional heat trade in this district of Skansi in Turku, which is a sustainable housing district in Turku, 4 or 5 kilometers from the center, with 7,000 inhabitants. So we are piloting this two-directional heat trade with a low temperature district heating network there. And just very shortly again about the low carbon sustainable mobility plans that we have in our climate plan. So we aim to reduce our greenhouse gas emissions in road and street traffic with at least 50% by the year 2029. And this is compared with the 2015 level actually. So this comes directly from the national program. So we have prepared this in accordance with the national program. And then the share of sustainable means of transportation is aimed at 2/3 by 2030. And also our public transport system in Turku is set to be a completely carbon neutral service by the year 2029. And already in the Turku city region or the Turku city area, the public transport aim is to be a carbon neutral service by 2025. So there's another angle to be implemented there. And cycling and walking conditions are improved around the year. We have lots of very good projects concerning that, and yes, citizens in Turku are quite active winter cyclists as well, which we are very happy about. And then I will just focus this last bit on the risk and vulnerability assessment that we made concerning climate risks. While we were preparing our SECUP last year, well, actually, I am quite a new member of the team, so I only came in the fall. But when my colleagues were preparing this risk and this sustainable energy and climate action plan, they also made a risk and vulnerability assessment according to the SECUP model. And here, by climate risks, we refer to potential direct and indirect harm to people, businesses, environment caused by climate, weather, and their development. And this includes both socioeconomic factors and physical and environmental factors. And also the city's vulnerabilities. So, for example, areas in which the city is especially poorly prepared to respond to changes, or, for example, extreme weather events or such were analyzed in this assessment. And the analysis had four different steps. Sorry, I'm just coughing a bit here. So we analyzed the current situation through different national and local reports and expert interviews. It was a very extensive expert interview kind of round was implemented or carried through. And there we also could analyze risks threatening the city and the vulnerabilities of the city. And then we had some expected impacts that we could achieve or just analyze through that. Yeah. So on the basis of these interviews and the reporting, analyzation, and the whole analysis, the risks posing a threat to the city of Turku currently and in the coming years were identified. And of course, in accordance with the SECUP guidelines, the current level and the expected changes and a likely time frame was assessed for each risk. Yeah, so here you can see what kind of risks are posed to threat the city of Turku. Some are already visible now, some will be even more visible in the future. So the analysis, as I told you, addresses both climate risks threatening the city, socioeconomic, physical, environmental vulnerabilities, and these outcomes are then used for planning and implementing an effective adaptation policy and measures. So we are quite in the beginning of planning kind of a wholesome adaptation plan. So we have some measures that we have already implemented, but we still have lots to do regarding the whole kind of scope of adaptation and yeah, just assessing the risks. So we have assessed and we know what we almost know, we can assess what we are facing, but we don't have all the measures implemented yet. So we are facing peak heat, peak cold, peak rain, flooding, sea level rise, drought, storms, erosion, forest fires. All of this can be faced in the Turku region in the future, and some already now. Which is interesting, also something important for us to communicate to our citizens and people living in the area, because many people might not see the climate risks in Finland as that hazardous, you know. Many citizens think that Finland might have more benefits from climate change, but well, according to our assessment, that is definitely not the case. So here are some analysis results, just shortly put into a table. You can see the risk level here, and actually when I told you about how we communicate to citizens about this, so through this assessment we found out that we have a high risk level in several of these climate hazard types. So for example, extreme precipitation, floods, storms, changes in ecosystem, introduced species. We have a high risk level in all of these. And then of course we have an expected time frame from short term to mid term to long term analyzed there. And then also as a specific thing for Turku, we decided to evaluate or analyze the reliability of the estimation also, just to have a kind of an angle or a view about how reliable these estimations might be for future assessments as well to be used. So our main risks, as a sum up of this table, our main risks on the basis of the analysis are: 1, risks in water bodies and water management, and then 2, risks caused by change in ecosystems. So those are the 2 most important, or yeah, the most important categories here. I might have told you this, everything that says here already, but let's just jump into these key methods to adapt and increase resilience in Turku. So to answer to these risks and our vulnerabilities in the city, we have 5 entities, or like under our key entity of adaptation, we have 5 different kind of measures or measure entities that we have named in our climate plan. So it's very important to increase information on climate. Citizens don't have enough information about how the climate changes in Turku and what kind of risks we are facing. We need different measures for water management and building. We need to safeguard ecosystems, and we have several adaptation projects that we need to undertake. And also it's very important to support a sense of community when facing climate hazards. So these are the 5 entities that we have in climate adaptation here. And at the same time, this might be familiar to you who have been in a SecUp process before, but this is just to show our adaptation status and measures, so what kind of scaling we have. So we found out that we are in a pretty good situation regarding our assessing the risks and vulnerabilities, but then, and we have a kind of this, as you can see from the scaling, we have a pretty good situation in all of those, but we need to focus especially on preparing the ground and monitoring, evaluating, and of course implementing the measures. So we have a pretty good status about assessing our risks and vulnerabilities, so we know what we are facing, and now we need to tackle these next categories. And just to conclude here about adaptation status and measures, I took some of our measures from our climate plan here so that you can see what kind of some examples of what kind of measures we have in adaptation. So well, as we now have analyzed our climate change risks and vulnerabilities quite extensively in Turku, we have certain adaptation measures that already have been implemented, for example, related to runoff water management and underground cabling of electrical power systems and so forth. But however, the consolidating of the overall view of the adaptation measures, so the overall view and coordination remains quite a challenge for us. So that's something that we need to analyze the measures and see if they are extensive enough, and that's work that we have ongoing and that we need to focus on in the future regarding adaptation. And here are some examples from the climate plan. So strengthening our carbon sinks is, as I told you, both a mitigation and an adaptation measure for us. Well, we are now, for example, updating the city's forest plan, and here we need to take our carbon sinks into consideration. And one interesting fact is that our carbon sinks, according to calculations in 2011 actually already, all carbon sinks, both soil and vegetation in the Turku area, covered about 15%. 15% of the emissions in the Turku region. So, well, that's a good situation, but we need to strengthen this more. And for example, the forest that the city owned by the city of Turku, without tree felling, the carbon absorption of the forests already now compensates for our passenger car emissions, which is about 10% of the total emissions in Turku. So that's the carbon sink situation right now. Yeah, but for example, we are using a green factor tool in our construction planning or implementing the use of this green factor tool, favoring soil preserving construction and long-lasting wood products. These are all measures included in the adaptation entity of our climate plan. And yes, to conclude, we are going to be carbon neutral by 2029, and by 2040 we aim to be a resource-wise Turku, so sustainable use of natural resources, no waste and no emissions by 2040. That is all. Thank you very much.